the restaurant that we've been eating at that I've been thoroughly enjoying. So when I FaceTime my wife, I told her that I'd be well taken care of. It'd be warm. It's a lot warmer here than it is in Georgia. And I might come back about Colorado. And I might come back about 5 pounds heavier if I didn't watch out. So I've got to take care of that. So all of us are dreamers. We were all born with this innate desire to want more in life. There's a song that you may have heard the words to. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Continue to say, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday that you'll join us and the world as one. Whether it's technology, someone like Steve Jobs who changed the way we think about technology, or whether it's music, or whether it's a political leader, someone who just wanted more in life. Inventions and the movements begin with the question, what if? What if life weren't like this? What if cars could drive themselves? Tesla. Right? What if phones could be used for more than just calling? iPhones. What if watches could actually tell you all kinds of data? Apple Watch. That's a powerful question, what if? And we're going to be spending some time talking about what if there was a master plan. Depending on where you are, you may be someone who has a relationship with God, you may be somebody who doesn't have a relationship with God, you may be somebody considering having a relationship with God. But we're going to talk about tonight, what if there really was a master plan? In your folder, there should be a handout that you have the opportunity to fill in. Different people learn in different ways. Some learn by watching, some learn by hearing, others learn by doing. And so we're going to try and make this accessible to as many different kinds of learners as there are. There are two questions that you probably are asking tonight. And they're the two questions that you ask about anything. Anytime you're about to make a decision, a very important decision, there are at least two factors that come into it. The first is when you realize that you need help at something, and you go to someone who's supposed to help you, the first question you need to know is, can you help me? If you fill in the right blank, can you help me? You want to make sure that the people that you are going to, or the place that you're going to, or whatever you're going to for help can actually assist you. But after that question's answered, maybe just picking what do you do for work? You're a pastor. Now, did you go to your father or mother to help you to learn how to become a pastor?
Not exactly.
Not exactly, because although they care about him, they love him, they wouldn't necessarily be able to help him. For that, he needed to go to seminary, to go to school. But after you've established that question, someone or something that can actually help you, the second question you have to answer is, can I trust you? Can I trust you? My wife and I needed to figure out how to make some money work. So we went to the bank to try and figure out a loan. And I was talking to the officer at the bank, my wife and I was saying, hey, listen, what do you do? He says, well, I'm a financial planner. I help people make decisions about life and do those kinds of things. I said, what's the single most challenging part about your job? And he says, without fail, it's getting people to trust me. If I can't get them to trust me to tell me about their financial life, because I don't know about you, but a lot of people don't like people all up in our financial business. And so if I can get people to trust me, then they can actually tell me what's going on. And if they don't actually tell me what's going on, I don't know if I can actually help them. So the two questions, number one, can you help me? And number two, can I trust you? And truthfully, especially if you don't really have a relationship with God or you're trying to figure this whole thing out, you don't know the answer to that. And you probably can't find that out overnight. It's something that will take some time to find out. But we're going to learn tonight a story about a king that had a problem. And through this problem, he got to know a little bit more about potentially what God could do to actually help him out. The story is told about a king called Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, he ruled Babylon from about 605 to 562 BC, almost 2,600 years ago. And as the story opens up in the book of Daniel, or chapter 2, if you have a Bible, you can check it out, or a phone. A lot of times nowadays with smartphones and tablets, people are able to access that, or just follow along on the screen. Daniel chapter 2 opens up with a situation, Nebuchadnezzar. Now, I know it's a strange name, but some of us name our kids a lot stranger. I mean, let's just be real. So Nebuchadnezzar, it says, now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, that sleep left him. Then the king gave orders to call all the magicians and the conjurers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. The king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to understand the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, saying, O king, live forever. Tell the dream to your servants, and we will declare the interpretation. Well, the king replied to the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans were another word for people who were supposed to, wise men, people who were supposed to give him help in these situations. The king replied to the Chaldeans, the command from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a rubbish heap. And you thought your boss was bad. But he says there's another alternative. If you declare the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and reward and great honor. Therefore, declare to me the dream and its what? Interpretation. So he's in a tight spot here, these wise men. And so they try again. They say, well, come on, king. They answered a second time and said, let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. Do you see this tug of war? The king saying, hey, listen, I had a dream. It's troubling me. I don't know what it means. I need you to let me know not only what the dream is, but also what it means. And the wise men say, well, king, okay, I got you. But here, can we just do a little halfway? Meet me halfway? You tell me the dream. I'll tell you what it means. But the king's not buying that. The king replied and said, hey, listen, the king, I know for certain that you are bargaining for time, because as you have seen that the command from me is firm, that if you do not make the dream known to me, there is only one decree for you. He's not budging. For you, he's saying, you've agreed together to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the situation is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. The Chaldeans said, oh boy, we're in trouble. They answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who could declare the matter for the king. Now that's really troubling, because their whole purpose in religious matters was to declare to the king what's going on. And here from their own mouth they're saying, hey, we can't do that. No one can do this. And they continue, for no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. We've never done it this way, king, he said. Moreover, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who can declare it to the king except God's, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. Well, as you can imagine, because of this, the king became indignant and very furious and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Now, normally this would be a non-issue, really, kind of my sister-in-law says, not my pigs, not my farm. The problem is that there were some wise men who were special. One named Daniel. So Daniel and his friends, they hear, and they are wise men. They were actually taken away from their homeland and forced to live almost in slavery terms. And they're having some issues, and their names had been changed. So back in about 605 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem. And back then, they did war a little differently than we do. Back then, when you went and took over a country or a nation, what you would do is you would kill the ones that were actually no good. They couldn't help you. They'd just kill them. And you would save the best. And you wouldn't kill them because they actually had they had value. They were knowledgeable. They could actually, they knew math. They had all these skills. They could actually help you. So what you would do is you would take them as slaves, bring them to your homeland for a couple of reasons. Number one, to kind of brag to everybody, say, ha ha, see what we did. You take them to your new homeland, and you would actually brainwash them. You change the way they think. You maybe give them new names, or you might say, hey, listen, I don't care who you thought your God was, but your God wasn't strong enough to save you. So now you serve our gods. And you would actually help that nation become more powerful and stronger. And that's exactly what King Nebuchadnezzar did. So he goes there, he completely besieged the city. And war back then was really interesting. For them to actually win against another nation, they had these walls erected. So what you would do is you would actually build up, you bring all your army, and it wasn't like, nowadays, it's not like war is really short, but back then war was really long. It might take 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Essentially what you would do is you would bring your whole force out there, and you would force the people to go back into their town or their city, their walls. The walls would be up, and you would basically starve them out. Who could last longer? Is the people who are coming to take over, are they going to be able to last, or the people inside? Well, obviously, Daniel and his friends didn't last. And so here the king has taken them back, and he's taken some of these people, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. He's changed their names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel's called Belshazzar. And now he has made them wise men. So they're put in this little predicament, and obviously they weren't part of this situation. Daniel was away, but Daniel's now told, hey, guess what? What? You're dead. Whoa. That's a little harsh, don't you think? And what's going on? So he has a conversation with Arioch, who's a king's guard. And he says, why is the king's decree so urgent? And Arioch says, hey, listen, man, I don't know what has gotten into the king. He's gotten this dream, and he is ticked. He wants somebody to explain the dream and what it means, or else you're all dead. So Daniel now is put into a really tough situation. So what does Daniel do? So Daniel went and requested time of the king, that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. So what does Daniel do next? And Daniel went into his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter, so that they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. And the interesting is, when all those wise men went to talk to the king and say, hey, listen, no one's able to do this. This is not a thing that people do. You don't just have dreams and expect people to tell you the dream, and then it's interpretation. Now, sure, if you tell us a dream, I'm sure we can lie, tell you it's interpretation, but you've got to give us something. And they said, no, that's not how it works, king. The king says, tell me my dream, you tell me what it means, or you're dead. Pretty simple. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room to make stuff up. But as we continue, it says, then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. And then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. Now, all the other gods of the time, and remember, Babylonians, they didn't just worship, Marduk was their main god that they worshiped, but they were polytheistic. They weren't really tied down to one god. They'd worship whatever god you brought, as long as it was lower than Marduk. So all these other religious gods, their supernatural beings, were helpless in this situation. But Daniel says, hey, the God of heaven has revealed this dream to me. Power belongs to him. Wisdom belongs to him. So Daniel answered and said, hey, listen, before the king, and said, as for the mystery about which the king had inquired, he says, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners were able to declare it to the king. No argument from them. But he says, however, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. The first point from the story, if you choose to believe it, because all of us, and it's really interesting, for those of us who are Christians, a lot of times people will come to you, and especially maybe if you're not sure about what you believe or you believe other than Christianity, people will say, hey, listen, we believe this thing and it's true. To which the person who might not believe might say, how do you know? Were you there? Did you see it? Well, no. I just believe that it's true. It's great for you. Not my cup of tea. I believe in something else. And it's interesting because sometimes we get really caught up in impressing on people and convincing them, no, trust me, I'm right. I got this data and that data and that data. Trust me, I'm right. And quite frankly, matters of the heart, matters of religion, it's not a matter of a fact or an opinion. It's completely up to the person's perspective. I can't convince you that God exists. It's a futile argument. All I can do is say, hey, listen, I tried God and it worked for me. Now, if you don't want to try him, then that's going to be on you. Daniel simply says, hey, listen, he tells the king, listen, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. Note that the other individuals had tried their gods, hadn't come up with anything. But here Daniel says, well, I tried my God, and I've got something for you. And apparently, Daniel was sure enough because he staked his life on this God. What if there really is a master plan? Did we just come from nothing, the Big Bang Theory? They say, hey, listen, there was nothing, and boom, there it was. And then we just evolved slowly over time. And listen, I'm not going to say, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Because quite frankly, I wasn't there either. I and anyone else who believes in this Judeo-Christian God who claims the Bible is a book, we all believe by faith. The scientists, and there are lots of things, and at first, scientists, they come across, and trust me, they know a lot of stuff, way more than a lot of individuals who are not scientists. And so I think sometimes we might do them a disservice, or people who believe might do, people who maybe don't believe or are scientists, and we might do them a disservice saying, well, you believe in science, whatever, I believe in God. It's like, great, where's your evidence? Evidence, yeah, that's a good one. The Bible, yeah, the Bible, well, that's irrelevant to me. What other evidence do you have? Oh, well, what's your evidence? Well, I've got this scientific theory, and they know a lot more math than we do. So give them credit for what they do know. But at the end of the day, both the believer and the non-believer, they both rely on the fact that they weren't there to see how it started. So they have to believe by faith. Daniel says, listen, there's a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, what will take place in the latter days. What's his point? The point is, and right there in your notes, there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. And knows your future. And what happens now is over the next few verses, Daniel describes this very interesting dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. And he starts by saying, in the dream, you saw a statue, and the statue had a head of what? Gold. It's interesting. And as he continues, and then there was also a chest and arms of what? Silver. And he says, in this dream, as you kept going, he describes a belly and thighs of bronze. He continues on, he says there are also legs of iron, and says that they were feet and iron of clay. And as he starts describing these, then Daniel says, not only am I going to tell you what you saw, I'm going to tell you what it means. King is still listening, apparently, so he continues. Daniel says, hey, you, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And I'm sure at this point, man, he's feeling pretty good about himself. But he continues, and he says, well, you are the head of gold. And as you go into history, you just start to look about how different kingdoms were set up. And you'll find that Babylon was known for gold. Gold was a fitting symbol of Babylon. Now, this is just history now. The historian Herodotus describes the golden image of Marduk seated upon a golden throne before a gold table and a gold altar. Gold is a very fitting jewel to describe Babylon. But Daniel doesn't stop there. After Nebuchadnezzar's full of himself and feeling that he's doing real well, Daniel continues, says, but after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. And I'm sure that made him feel really good. Inferior. That makes, okay, I like that. I'll take it. And as you continue, we'll find out in history at this point, it's just a matter of chasing down the history books. The kingdom that comes after Babylon is Medo-Persia. Medo-Persia was represented by silver, just as silver was used for personal adornment by Persian warriors and was also the metal of the monetary system. Now, realize that Daniel, of course, dies way before this happens, but here he is predicting what is going to happen before it happens. Another word for that is knowing the future. Daniel says, listen, then a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. This represented Greece, ruled from 331 to 168 BC. This was Greece, the Hellenistic empire of Alexander the Great and his successors. After that, he says, then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron. Like iron crushes and shatters all things, so like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. Referring to Rome. After Alexander died, his generals divided the empire against themselves, and they stretched themselves out so far that they could not handle it. And what happens is Rome defeats the Greeks in 168 BC. The historian Edward Gibbon had this to say about Rome in the book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Arms of the Republic of Rome, sometimes vain, always victorious in war, at the images of gold or silver or serve to represent the nations and their kings, successively broken by the iron monarchy of Rome. There's something interesting about this. After that, Daniel says, listen, in that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom. The kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile, as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay. They will not combine with one another in the seed of men. This is talking about the next kingdom. Even as iron does not combine with clay. So then Daniel goes on to describe and talk about the collapse of the next kingdom. And after Rome breaks down, it's divided into a bunch of different kingdoms. And if you go after history, after the collapse of Rome, the empire was divided in 10 divisions: Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Franks, the Vandals, the Suevi, the Alemanni, Anglo-Saxon, the Heruli, Lombardi, and Burgundians. Ooh, some of these are tough. Burgundians, today known as modern-day France, England, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Portugal, Spain. Now notice what verse 43 said. They will not combine with one another. And if you look in today, just looking again into history, what you'll see, especially Europe has tried and tried and tried to stay united. Saying, listen, together we can do a lot more than we can apart. The European Union, this political economic union of 28 member states, has tried to unite Europe through currency, the euro, intergovernmental decisions. But as much as these countries tried to be united, God foretold that the countries would not stick together. On June 23, 2016, almost 52% of the United Kingdom's membership, they voted to leave the European Union, also known as Brexit. Brexit is a fulfillment of prophecy. So listen, I don't care what you try to do, they will not stay together. What's our point? God is saying, hey, listen, 2 Peter writes, says, discover for yourself The Lord is kind. Come to him for protection, and you will be glad. That's actually Psalms. But Daniel said, listen, the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. And he continues, says, and in those days, in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and it will stand forever. And so while Daniel is speaking to the king, and you've got to remember, the king is in a situation where he's got this dream, and it really troubled him. He can't sleep. He doesn't know what's going on. It's frustrating him. And he says, hey, listen, all you wise men, all you people that are supposed to be able to tell me what I need to know, tell me what's going on. And they said, we got nothing. King says, you're dead. Daniel says, whoa, hold on. Give me some time. And ask God to reveal what's going to happen. It says, hey, Daniel says, the king, God of heaven, has revealed to you what's going to happen in these latter days. And he breaks down this image. And he says, hey, first, you Babylon, boom, you're going to be first. Then there's going to come another kingdom, then another kingdom. But as you get to the end, it says the final kingdom will never be destroyed again. The God of heaven will set up a kingdom. The same God that told him, I am going to take care of you. The same God that told Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head, then there's chest, and all these things, says, I'm going to set up a kingdom. But the thing about my kingdom is it will never be destroyed. God has a good master plan. God says, you don't have to worry. There is a plan, and it's a good plan. But then we get down to the point, well, how am I supposed to know? How can I trust you that it's a good plan? And God says, simple. Open your mouth and taste. Open your eyes and see how good God is. Blessed are you who run to him. The interesting thing about Daniel and the people who had followed God, they didn't always get things right. In fact, they were going through a time when Jeremiah writes these words, when the children of God had actually been disobedient. And God, who's not a respecter of persons, said, hey, listen, if you trust me, if you follow me, then I will take care of you. But if you disobey, he says, there are also consequences for that. And his children were stubborn and obstinate. I'm sure none of you ever were that. But they were stubborn and they were obstinate. And God said, hey, listen, natural consequences. I love you, but choices have consequences. And as a result of their disobedience, they actually went into exile. And during this time, they were shattered. They were hopeless. They were so discouraged. They were saying, man, here we are, God's people, but we're struggling like this. And God said, yeah, you chose that. And in their discouragement, and as they were so frustrated and down, and they just felt like God had abandoned him, God said, nope, I've got you covered. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a future and a hope. But he doesn't stop there. He continues. He said, listen, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. As we spend time over the next 7 days talking, having a conversation, dreaming together, what if? Your life could be in one of many different places. Maybe you've grown up and to follow God, and maybe you've heard a lot of people say a lot of things, and you come to church and you hear people talking about God, but you've never tasted and seen for yourself. God's saying, I'm here for you. Maybe you're saying, man, I don't want anything to do with this God thing. My wife and I were sitting down with one of her friends a couple weeks ago, and we're just having a conversation, and she was unable to have children naturally, and so she needed some help to get some, all these different things that were going to need to happen for her to be able to have a child. And my wife said, hey, man, I've been praying for you. And she said, you know what? I don't even know if you're a believer. And she said, actually, no, I'm not a believer. Oh, I said, okay, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. She's like, no, it's okay. I get it. But, my uncle, he committed suicide at a really young age. And I just realized then I didn't need a moral compass. I don't need God. And it was sad to me because, unfortunately, it was her circumstances that had led her to a place where she felt that God was absolutely irrelevant in her life. And so my wife said, I understand. I can appreciate your perspective. I hope things work out for you. But maybe you're disillusioned with this whole idea of God. Unfortunately, people who sometimes claim to actually be the worst kind of people. And what makes that especially hurtful is that you claim to follow a God that's loving and kind and compassionate, but you are none of those things. And so it's very unfortunate because some people who claim to have faith in God act like they're actually working for the devil. So many people say, if that's Christianity, I'm good. Don't want any part of it. Mahatma Gandhi said, hey, I have no problem with your God. It's the people who claim to follow your God that I have issue with. And maybe you're in a season of life where it's like, man, listen, I knew about a God, but I'm not interested. People have hurt me. Nah, I'm good. Or maybe you're saying, I have absolutely nothing to say about God, just completely irrelevant to my life. The challenge is, I don't care who you are. Life is going to knock you down. And there's going to come a time in your life when you're going to have to figure this thing out and say, man, is this the best way to live life? And it's interesting. I'll meet people who say, yeah, you know, I'm religious, but then I see the lifestyle. I'm like, what part of you is? Oh, my bad. I mean, hey, but I'm. Yeah. Or I'll meet people who say, no, I have no need for God at all. And but then you look at what they're running to, and they're just, everyone is hurting. I don't care if you're black, you're white, if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're gay, if you're straight, everyone is hurting. And the question is, what source are you going to relieve your pain? God says, man, I'd love to help out. He says, man, come try me. But he says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Not part, all. You've really got to throw yourself into this thing. And God is not saying, hey, listen, trust me with everything before I've shown you my protection. He says, nope, taste and see. And so the invitation is over the next couple of days, and that's not even really how it ends. He says this is an invitation of a lifetime, but he says, try me out. Don't read about people who think they know me. Don't necessarily follow people who even claim to know me. No, follow me. Come check it out. Spend time in a relationship. Because then, and I have a lot of respect for people who say, hey, listen, man, I did the Christian thing. I tried it out. I lived the lifestyle, and it just wasn't for me. I'm like, cool. But at least you were exposed, hopefully, to the God of the Bible. But how people can say no to a God who's loving, compassionate, who doesn't judge, who always gives you chances, and they say no to that and say yes to something else. I'm like, man, I hope you really find what you're looking for. What if there really is a master plan? Remember, there's at least two questions that everyone asks. Can you help me? And can I trust you? God is saying, man, I can help you. And you can trust me. But you can't take my word for it. You've got to try it out for yourself. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about what if we could know how it all works out? If there really is a master plan, how does it work? And how do I fit into this master plan? Now, if God can really help me, what does that look like? The thing about God, he's always been a gentleman of sorts. He doesn't come pounding into your life and say, hey, do what I say now. No, he says, hey, behold, I stand at the door and I'm knocking. If anybody hears me, he says, I'll open up the door and we can hang out together and spend time and build trust. So I hope that you don't miss any of these evenings as we talk about what if. What if there's a God that actually loves me and cares about me and doesn't judge me? What if I could know the plan? What if I could live free? What if I could be happier? What if I could really enjoy life? You'll have to find out and see for yourself. Have a good night.
Sure. All right, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
All right. At the end of each session, right about this time, we're allowing a few minutes for questions and answers. If there were any questions that were raised in tonight's study, feel free to ask them now. Daniel's been speaking for a while, but you can challenge him. He's a big boy. You can challenge him, whether it be pushback, feedback, questions, curiosity. Feel free to check in with him. Now, I don't know if there are any questions. Feel free to jump out, raise your hand. We'll recognize you or try to recognize you. There is a question, and the question is,
earlier you mentioned that we have faith.
Right. Okay.
But the next one, the evolution,
Okay.
they have faith as well.
Right.
Because none of us were there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But they do have facts
Okay.
that they can prove to us.
Okay.
They do have sciences.
Okay.
They're there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only faith. So how do we, I don't think faith could be just to write have this rebuttal. It's not there.
Okay.
So what?
So
repeat the question.
if I hear your question correctly, you're saying, hey, listen, maybe I'm a believer, someone who believes that that God created it, and I'm speaking to somebody who does not share that perspective, and their perspective is more of a naturalistic piece where they believe in science. Not that we don't, but they believe that maybe the Big Bang and that's how everything came about, and they absolutely do not believe in IT, which is called intelligent design. They're saying, listen, intelligent design, no. There's no such thing as intelligent design. We came from nothing and then we evolved over time into what we are now. And your question is, if I'm hearing you correctly, how do we speak to them and how do we communicate that we disagree, but at the same time win them over? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or you're saying, how can I defend my faith when someone says, I've got facts, what do you got? Okay, fair enough. The first thing is, I think the spirit in which we have these conversations is very disturbing. Unfortunately, and if you look at the history of religion, unfortunately, people who have tended to claim religion have been very oppressive toward people who have been open thinkers. And if you go look back to Galileo and things like that, when people have power, they tend to be corrupt. Maybe you've heard the term power corrupts and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And so if you go into history, first respect their perspective. As they look back and they see how history has happened, usually what happens is those that have had the power in the past, which has tended to be the church, they have used it as a rod and just pummeled anyone who disagreed. Galileo said, hey, listen, I don't think the earth is the center of the universe. And the church said, you better recant or we're going to kill you. Okay, my bad. He said, I'm wrong. Okay. But he wasn't really wrong. He was just under pressure to say what the people that had the power wanted him to say. So when you look at that history, people don't tend to be very open. Why? Because I know as long as you have the bat, you're going to hit me if I don't think the way you think. And so now, as time has shifted, now the people who believe in science and strongly in that, now they have the bat. And so the moment someone says, well, I believe in God, they say, shut up. And if you look at people, they don't even necessarily believe in creation. They believe in intelligent design. And intelligent design, among the academic community, is simply this perspective that I just don't think, based on the evidence, it's really difficult scientifically to say that these changes are all due to random mutations. And they have their doubts. There's a book called Darwin's Black Box. If you go read that book, Darwin's Black Box, it just talks about just when you look at this idea that, somehow that we evolved over long, long ages, the challenge is you cannot sustain certain forms of life. It's like saying we didn't have eyes, and then over thousands and millions of years, we kind of sort of maybe developed an eye, and we tried and failed a couple times, millions over years, and then we finally had eyes. And the problem is, and I don't want to make it sound trite, the problem is, from a scientific standpoint, that's not sustainable. You can't kind of have an eye for millions of years and then have one. So they know that there are some serious issues about where they stand. The thing is, as you come to them, say, hey, listen, I want to first understand your perspective. So don't come saying, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Say, can you show me what I'm perhaps missing? And they'll say, well, here's our perspective, da, 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 da. And then take that, listen, and say, okay. And actually, here's the thing, do some research. Become more educated. Just because we're creationists, it doesn't mean we have a past to be dumb. And so many times we say, I believe in God. Does that mean you don't study? What happened to study and show yourselves approved? So take some time and understand the basics of science so that when they're talking, you won't be able to understand all their language, but at least you can start to speak intelligently about why you believe what you believe. But I have to stress this. A lot of us, most of our decisions are not made from a logical standpoint. We make most of our decisions emotionally. And so when someone has an emotional investment in their perspective, good luck coming with your facts to try to change their mind. You're better off saying, man, you've got a really tough job as a scientist, and you've got a lot of data. And man, I respect that you guys have a lot of data. Help me understand it. And then when you build relationships, then they're more likely to say, well, yeah, we do have a lot of data and facts, but we're still working it out. Other words, we don't have it all figured out. And they're just looking to know that you're not so arrogant. Because I could be wrong about God. Do you know that, right? We could be wrong. When you come to the table and say, there's no way I'm wrong, what do I have to say to you? Right? So come with humility, get educated, and develop relationships. Go ahead. Sure.
So chaotic.
Sure.
Can create such complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everything that is created has such complex.
Sure.
The cell, the human body, everything that in the world is
Sure.
very complex. So how do you get complexity out of
Right.
chaos?
Absolutely. And if they're truthful, but they're under a lot of stress. I don't know if you're aware of this. If you even purport to start believing in this idea that maybe someone somewhere, not God, somewhere, somehow, there was a design to this, you will be excommunicated. You will no longer have a job. And let me tell you, when you have 2 PhDs in molecular biology and chemistry, you're not employable anywhere else. So out of academia, you're pretty useless. So they have to quiet their concerns for them to have a job. So they're facing a lot of pressure. Any other questions? Or yes, go ahead. Mike's coming to you.
What about a cultural standpoint? I'm coming from Africa, and they base their faith on ancestors
Sure.
and tradition. What
Okay.
about them? How do you approach that type of people?
Yeah. So on the other perspective, so how do you approach your faith with people who are very based on ancestral beliefs, etc.? It's really a lot of the same thing. Again, you're not going to convince someone with your facts about what they believe in because they have a lot of reasons to believe what they believe, and they're emotionally invested. For example, if you were to talk to someone and say, hey, listen, in Christendom, a lot of people believe when you die, you go to heaven. Well, the wrong thing to do is at the funeral say, actually, your mom's in the ground. She's not in heaven. You lack tact. You can be right, but be in the wrong relationship, and you're wrong. So you have to strive not only to be in the right, because all of us like to be right. And quite frankly, all of us think we're right. But all of us are wrong in that sense. You can't just be right. You have to be in the right relationship. So with the same thing, spend time with them, understand their customs. And the thing is, it's messy work dealing with people. Somehow someone got this impression that if we just tell them enough facts, then they'll come right along our bandwagon. And it's absolutely not true. You have to spend time, understand who they are, why they believe what they believe, and then just be committed to them to understand that, listen, this is not going to happen overnight. It's the work of a lifetime. And so all I can do is be a resource that cares about you. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about how does what you believe sit with you when you're really going through a dark time. Understand them, love them, care about them. And when the time is right, that opportunity will come. But it's not saying, hey, come to this, believe it, it's going to help you. Get out of my face. So, anyone else before we close? Yes, in the back. Okay? No. That's right. That's right. Right. Okay.
It's just a comment.
Sure, a comment, yeah. Any other questions before we close for the evening? And, oh, one more. Ooh, last second. Ooh.
How do you get someone who's grown up in the church and they grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist faith and they know everything, but they turn away for maybe they learn too much, they turn to philosophy or something, and how do you approach someone like that, or how do you, I don't know, like get them to come back somehow?
Sure. Even the way that you phrase that, as a Christian, my job isn't to get anyone to do anything. And if I'm honest, we're so bad at that. We believe that God has told us, you better go and force them and make them see me, etc., at any cost necessary. When Jesus says, hey, listen, we are salt and we are light. So for your friend who maybe someone you know that's grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church and they've left it, maybe they know too much, they've turned to some other, philosophies, etc. A large reason why people leave the church has actually nothing to do with our beliefs. It's the people. It's the people that tend to be the problem. And so in this situation, depending on the relationship I have, if I knew them well, like Richard, he was my best man in my wedding, I know him well. If he left the faith, God forbid, I wouldn't be like, well, hi, Richard, my name's Daniel. I'd be like, bro, what's going on? Because we have a relationship where he would tell me, right, Richard? Well, there you go. Maybe you thought you knew a guy. Hopefully the relationship would be at a place where he would actually tell me and confide in me the reason why. It could be a lot of different things. I would start with, they got hurt. Someone somewhere said something, did something to them. And if it wasn't that, unfortunately, those who have tended to grow up in the Christian Seventh-day Adventist church have felt a lot of pressure to perform, to behave the right way. And so unfortunately, that might be it. The expectations culturally or on themselves, thinking they're not good enough, you can only bear that for so long. And if you don't find grace, you better find the door. Because no one can live under that heap of, you better do this, you better do that. Oh, you didn't do that. You didn't go to the right place. Oh, you did that. That's way too heavy. So finding out why they left, probably hurt, or they're hurting under expectations, other people, or they place on themselves. And then love them. Love them. Love them.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate you sharing with us tonight. There are a couple of things we need to share with you and a couple of things we need you to do. Number one, if you'd be so kind, please fill out the registration card that is in front of you. Put your name and your contact information on it. And we're going to ask you to do that every night. By the way, we do have some prizes to give away.
Hey, that's all right.
We got some prizes. So we get your registration cards enough times, you become eligible.
There it is.
All right, so please do that. Number two, write your name on your binders. Kindly take your binders with you. If you just need to leave it in your car, leave it in your car. Bring it back tomorrow night, all right? So please take your binders with you and bring them back each night. Now, what you can expect the rest of the week, you want to be here at about 7:15. Maybe 7:10 is fine. We'll start exactly at 7:30, and we're going to let you out exactly at 8:30. We know we have to work, we have things to do. It's 7:30 to 8:30, so you want to get here just a little early. During the week, we will have refreshments ready for you. And beginning Monday, we're going to have a little bit more than refreshments in the event you're coming straight from work.
Amen.
You don't have time for supper. We're going to set up in the fellowship hall in the other room, in the dining room, and you can get something there beginning Monday. Tomorrow night, chances are you're not working, but if you are, we'll still have some light refreshments for you. But beginning Monday, we're going to get a little heavier, just in case you're coming straight from work and you need something to eat before you try to engage your brain here.
Amen.
All right, so what do I need you to do tonight?
Registration.
Registration and binders.
Binders.
Do me a favor, pass all the registration cards to one person at the table, designate them the lead for the table. They're responsible for getting that information to me. And as you exit, we do have some refreshments, some crackers and cheese and such, and some water. Feel free to make a friend. Okay, you may not know everybody in the room. You may not know anybody in the room. Feel free to make a friend, spend a little time dilly-dallying, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Get on out of here.